So I'm Zoe Lee, and I'm a high school student, and I'm part of the Central and South Texas Red Cross.
I'm Katie Liu. I'm also a high school student, and I'm also part of the Central and South Texas region for the Red Cross.
Hey, my name is Ashi Srivastava. I'm a college student and I'm also part of Central and South Texas Region Red Cross.
Hey guys, I'm Francesca Pocuomo Bang. I'm a college student and I am a member of the Central South Texas Region Red Cross. So basically, I'm going to introduce the Red Cross briefly. We are an organization that responds to local and national disasters with the help of volunteers that are spread out into different chapters nationwide. So if you guys would like to learn more about the Red Cross and what we do, please feel free to use the link in the chat that Ashi will put there to our website for more information. And now we'll have the medical marvels.
So, hi there, everyone. My name is Sid. I am the co-events manager for Medical Marvels. And just a little bit about us, we're a nonprofit with a goal to promote medical literacy and awareness to high schoolers and college students. We have opportunities like this guest speaker event today, as well as student published articles. I think someone might be unmuted. Okay. Alex, just so you know, you're unmuted. Okay. And it's like this guest speaker event today, as well as like student published article shadowing. Our main goal is to educate others about information and just kind of spread awareness about the world of healthcare. So that's a little bit about me. If my team is up for it, I'll popcorn it off to Julia to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Julia. I'm a high schooler and I am the co-graphic design for Medical Marvels. And I guess like Sid said, we're just here to spread more medical literacy to other high school and college students. And now we're here collabing. If there's anybody else from the team here, then they can go ahead.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm Sonia. I'm the marketing director of Medical Marvels, and I'm really excited to be at this event. Like Julia said, we're just here to spread medical literacy, and we're so grateful you guys could join us today.
My name's Stephanie. I'm the co-graphics lead with Julia, and just echoing what all my other team members have said, we're really excited to be here with you guys today and to learn a bit more from our guest speakers.
Oh, Anusha put hers in the chat. She's our writing director. And I think that'll be it from our end. If you guys you guys can continue on.
Okay, sounds good. So a little bit about the webinar is it's about like an hour and 20 minutes long, and throughout it, you're going to be able to have the chance to learn more about medical information, scientific research, emergency response, and just overall health and science through these three experienced professionals in both the science and medical field. And so before we start, if there are any questions about the presentation, please put them in the chat, and we're going to have a Q&A at the very end of the event. And also, we are going to have volunteer hours for people who attended. So if you want like signatures or something, reach out to Medical Marvels.
Just get out over there, man. Get out.
I know, just don't do it. Just do this. It's more
Hey.
get out.
Okay, thank you, Zoe. We're going to be passing it on to Katie, who will be introducing each of the guest speakers today.
Okay, so our first speaker is the wonderful Dr. Joseph Rossano. Dr. Rossano is the Chief of Cardiology and Executive Co-Director of the Cardiac Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and Professor of Pediatrics at the University of Pennsylvania. He is also the co-chair of the Scientific Advisory Council of the American Red Cross. His career has been dedicated to improving the lives of children with cardiovascular diseases, including the prevention and treatment of cardiac arrest. He has had a ton of education in cardiology and will be sharing some of his knowledge now. And again, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to enter them in the chat.
Great. Hi, good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. So thanks for inviting me. And it's wonderful to see so many young people that are interested in helping others and they're interested in medicine and science. So I'm just going to share my screen here. And, if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to shout them out as well or put them in the chat. Okay, so hopefully you can see me okay. And this is showing up. So I'm a pediatric cardiologist. So I help take care of children with heart disease. And, as mentioned, I co-chair the Scientific Advisory Council for the American Red Cross. And I know a lot of you are with the Red Cross, so you probably know this. So I thought I would just share, though, what does the American Red Cross do? What is its mission? It's to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of volunteers and the generosity of donors. And, for those of you that are Red Cross volunteers, I and the whole organization is grateful for the work that you do, because ultimately the Red Cross is always there for people in times of need. And the Red Cross has really been involved with resuscitation and first aid for a long, long time. And this is picture from over 100 years ago, where they were involved with water safety and helping to prevent drownings and helping to rescue patients if they were drowning. And over time, the Red Cross recognized that in order to provide the best training for its volunteers and in order to save the most lives, it really needed to be grounded in science. And that's where the Scientific Advisory Council came together. And so what that is and what I help to co-chair is that group. And we're a group of scientific, academic, and emergency science leader who develop guidelines using the best clinical and educational science. And I'm really fortunate to work with just wonderful people that are part of this group, including experts in resuscitation, emergency medicine, critical care, nursing, and then, like myself, people that are interested in special populations like children or older people. And we will all come together to provide the Red Cross with the best possible science that we can. So I thought I would just sort of start off talking about resuscitation with a patient. And this was a patient that I cared for actually in Texas. I know some of you were mentioning that you're in Texas. So I'm here in Philadelphia now, but I spent a good part of my career in Houston at Texas Children's Hospital. And I cared for this young lady who was thought to be previously healthy, but she collapsed suddenly and became unresponsive when she was at school. This was witnessed by a surveillance camera, and people were gathering around, and fortunately a nurse was alerted pretty quickly, and she was promptly on scene and did a very important thing, which was that she started CPR. And the other really important thing that they had there at the school was an automated external defibrillator. So after she started CPR, she had an AED that she had brought with her from the school office. And you may be familiar with these automated defibrillators. They're in many, many public places, and hopefully they're in your schools as well, both your high school and your colleges. But what they can do is for patients under a certain type of heart rhythm, they can essentially shock the heart back into a normal rhythm, which is a very key life-saving maneuver. And this is what a normal heart rhythm should look like. And we call this a normal or a sinus rhythm, or it's nice and organized, it's nice and regular, and that corresponds to nice, even contractions of the heart. But this was a rhythm that my patient was in, very disorganized. And in this heart rhythm, the heart cannot function normally. So there's basically no output from the heart. There's no blood going out to the body like it was needed. But fortunately, this AED was there, was able to deliver a shock. And after one shock, the heart went back into a normal rhythm, a little bit slower than maybe one would like, but still back into a normal rhythm, which was life-saving for this individual. What it turned out was that she had a condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is basically just means thickened heart muscle disease. And these are ultrasound images of the heart. And this is the wall here, if my pointer is showing up, but that's kind of the middle part of the heart. And I can just tell you that's incredibly thick. And you can see that over here is just another view of the heart. So she was otherwise fine. She didn't know that she had this, but this incredibly thick heart that she had predisposed her to having this dangerous and life-threatening arrhythmia. But she had a great outcome. She got great CPR on scene. She was shocked with an AED. Emergency medical personnel were there quickly. They brought her to the emergency department, and by the time she arrived in the emergency department, she was awake and talking and felt fine. They confirmed this diagnosis. We were able to confirm this diagnosis in her, which is actually a relatively common cause of cardiac arrest in young people. Most young people, fortunately, don't suffer cardiac arrest, but if they do, this is one of the more common reasons. And she was able to have an implantable defibrillator placed, which can also be a life-saving procedure. And she was, discharged home a week later, really, in great condition. So if we think about, cardiac arrests and having the need for CPR, it's actually a very common cause of death, which I think probably most people may not realize. Most of these are in adults, but certainly children can suffer cardiac arrest, and young adults, young people can suffer cardiac arrest as well. And overall, there are about 350,000 cases of these out-of-hospital cardiac arrests every year. And if you look at these other common causes of death, things like Alzheimer's disease, breast cancer, colorectal cancer, fires, motor vehicle accidents, all of those added up actually are less than having an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. So if we can target this population and improve that, we have the ability to potentially save, thousands and hundreds of thousands of lives every year. All right, so what can we do? How can we improve outcomes from this? Well, I'd say the first is prevention, right? Best thing to do is to prevent it from ever happening. And then the next most important thing, if you're unable to prevent the arrest, and we will not be able to prevent all these arrests, is performing high quality CPR. So immediately, doing CPR. And that's something that, every one of us can do. And then, diagnose and treat things that can be treated. And that's where these automated defibrillators come in. If somebody has one of these dangerous arrhythmias that can respond to defibrillation, getting that on the patient as quickly as possible makes a difference. And I'm not going to talk about the last point there, but these are some kind of heroic measures that we can make in the hospital that can also save lives. But I'll just talk about the top three here. All right, so we all know the famous saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that comes from Benjamin Franklin. And others, but where I am now in Philadelphia, Benjamin Franklin spent most of his life, and he really believed in prevention and actually started the first fire department in Pennsylvania and in Philadelphia, where he realized it's far better to prevent a fire. And so setting up things to prevent fires, because once the fire erupts, especially in those days, really hard to put out without it doing tremendous damage. So if we can focus on preventing these arrests, that's really, the best thing. And we do have this chain of survival, and actually the first chain is prevention, right? So, this really goes to our policies for things like screening people before they participate in sports or other activities, so we can hopefully diagnose any underlying cardiovascular disease. So my patient was 15 years old, had a serious cardiovascular disease, but it was never diagnosed. So could we have done a better screening for her to be able to pick that up so we could have prevented this arrest to begin with? A lot of arrests occur after accidents. So how can we, set up our roads and our cars to prevent that? For babies, sudden infant death syndrome is a common cause of death. So what can we do to, prevent that in young children? But again, we're not going to be able to prevent every case of cardiac arrest. So we want to treat these, if somebody has a cardiac arrest, as soon as possible. And that's where just basic fundamental CPR comes in. This has been known for a long time that chest compressions, and if somebody's willing to, respirations as well, mouth-to-mouth ventilations, is incredibly effective. You don't need, fancy technology or sophisticated equipment to be able to do this. It's simple, pressing on the chest, pressing hard, pressing fast, that can save many, many lives. And it's really, a very simple procedure to perform. And we know this from multiple studies that a bystander performing CPR is one of the most important predictors of having a good outcome of anything else that we can do. It's in these minutes when the arrest first happens that is the most impactful time to intervene positively. And if somebody is there that is willing and able to step in and provide chest compressions, and if they're able and willing to, ventilations as well, and then defibrillation, chest compression, CPR, defibrillation, using an AED are just incredibly impactful, life-saving maneuvers. And I'll just talk a little bit about compressions. I think one of our other speakers may be going into some of these, but it's good to take a course in how to do this correctly. But even if you don't have a course, you can do it. It's basically pressing hard and pressing fast. You like to do it about 100 per minute. Some people say you could do it to the beat of Staying Alive, if you know that old song from the 70s, or something that has a similar beat to it. You want to go down a couple inches, so you need to push hard. You want to let the chest fully recoil. I mean, you want to let up completely on the chest, and ideally you want to minimize interruptions. And if you are providing ventilation, this is really for kind of paramedics or people that have a bag valve mask or airway equipment, but you don't want to give too many ventilations because that can actually impair compressions. But if you remember nothing else, for chest compressions, press hard, press fast, allow the chest to recoil, and you'll be doing a great job in helping to save a life. And again, I'm not going to show all the data about how impactful that is, but it incredibly increases the likelihood of somebody being alive and being alive with good neurologic function if they get bystander CPR. And if you combine that with an automated defibrillator, it's even better. And this figure here just sort of demonstrates that. The blue line here are patients that got bystander CPR, and the red line are those that didn't. The higher number is more survivors. So, even in the best case scenario where, patients got, bystander CPR and an ambulance was there right away, still the survival, wasn't great at 25%. We'd like it to be 100%. But if you look at all time periods, meaning, if it took longer for EMS to get there, survival wasn't as good. But at all time periods, those patients that got bystander CPR did better. And that's even for extended time. So even if it took an ambulance 30 minutes to get there, if people on scene can be doing chest compressions that whole time, you're giving that person the best chance of surviving. So this is what we'd like to see. We'd like to see everybody doing CPR, right? I mean, I don't know that little babies could do it, but hey, you can't start too young in my mind. But we don't want to see is this. And this is what we see, sadly, many times. It's a crowd of people around somebody that has, lost consciousness and has suffered a cardiac arrest. And they're just, and to be fair, people are maybe not know what to do. But that's where, we can come in as people that are interested in saving lives, to making sure people do know what to do, to provide training in the community, to give people the knowledge and the confidence so they can intervene to help save a life. And then if there are causes that are treatable, we want to find them and treat them as soon as we can. Outside of the hospital, the real main intervention is automated defibrillators. There's other things that we can do in the hospital to try to identify cases of what caused a cardiac arrest and intervene that's, specific to the cause. But, if, there's a, stranger or somebody has an arrest, and you don't have medical equipment to be able to make these diagnoses, the best thing that we can do is, if there's a defibrillator nearby, get the defibrillator, put it on the patient, and these automated defibrillators basically walk you through, and they'll tell you whether or not a shock needs to be delivered. They're highly accurate, so you can really trust these machines, even in children, even actually in babies. They're very accurate. So if it advises to give a shock, that it's probably correct, like, well over 90+% of the time. And then so delivering that shock and then doing chest compressions, you're really giving this person a good chance to survive. And this is one of these things where time is really of the essence. And for every minute that goes by where defibrillation is not performed, meaning a person is in one of these dangerous arrhythmias, but there's not a defibrillator available, that for every minute, the likelihood of survival goes down by about 10%. So, a minute goes by pretty quickly. And so, 5 or 10 minutes or 20 or 30 minutes go by without defibrillation, it becomes, less and less likely that, the patient will survive. So that's why it's really critical to have AEDs around. In school settings, we really recommend that, for organized sports, for people of any ages really, but for high school, college athletes, for recreation centers, things like that, there really should be a defibrillator on site, and people trained in CPR, because time is of the essence. And even if the paramedics get there in 10 minutes, which is pretty quick, that may be too late. All right, so what can you do? Well, you can volunteer, as I know many of you do, for great organizations like the American Red Cross that are, interested in, saving lives. I should also mention that, resuscitation is just one part of the thing. The Red Cross does. They know more about their work in in blood donation and blood product delivery, but they play major roles in responding to disasters, in drowning prevention. So there's just tremendous work that goes on in this wonderful humanitarian organization, and there's plenty of opportunities to volunteer and get involved. If you don't already know CPR, I would really encourage you to learn it. There's a lot of courses that one can take to do it. You can learn to do compression only CPR, really in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, really quickly. And if you're interested, you can learn more advanced parts of resuscitation and really become an expert in it. And if you're interested in that, to become an expert, that's great. Become a CPR instructor, and then you can teach others, and then your knowledge can just multiply and multiply and multiply, through all your students. And that's just a great way to be involved in the community and ultimately save lives. There's the World Red Cross Day, which is May 8th every year, and I also just wanted to point out that the Red Cross is really an international organization. There's an International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, which are unified in their humanitarian efforts. They do wonderful work together in each of their individual countries, but also collectively for their work. I won't go into all the history of the Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, but it really is a tremendous history, and the American Red Cross has played a large role. Actually, the first Nobel Peace Prize ever went to the individual who founded the Red Cross Society. So, pretty cool. All right, so with that, I will stop. I'm happy to answer any questions now or at the end. And yeah, again, really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you this evening.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Rossano, for sharing. Our next speaker is Mr. Brian Moeschler. Mr. Moeschler is the Regional Donor Services Executive for the Biomedical Services team in Texas. Mr. Moeschler earned a Master of Science in Emergency Management, which focused on operationalizing mitigation, preparation, response, and recovery to large disasters, whether natural or man-made, before joining the American Red Cross in 2011. He has since led multiple lines of services within North Texas and has also spent several years with their national operations team managing and administrating programs, project management, and strategic planning initiatives. And again, just like the other presentation, if you have any questions during this one, feel free to enter them in the chat.
Thank you, Katie. And thank you to Zoe. I'm really excited to be here tonight. I hope everyone is doing well. It's always exciting to see young people just looking for information, but also volunteering at the Red Cross. So thanks for all of your work. I am going to share my screen. So if I could just get a thumbs up from someone to say that they can see it, or let's see here.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, thank you. All right, so as Katie said, my name is Brian Moeschler. I'm the Donor Services Executive for our Biomedical Services team at the American Red Cross here in Texas. I'm going to talk to you about our what we do in blood services. So I'm going to be talking a lot about blood donations and the process it does to get to transfusible product. So without further ado, I really appreciated, I think it was the gentleman before me that had spoken about the mission, and I'm struggling with getting my screen to move to the next. One second. Let's try this again. All right, it looks like it's working now. All right, as I was mentioning, the gentleman that was speaking before me talked about the mission of the American Red Cross, and I've drilled it down to talk about the our biomedical services mission, which is fulfilling the needs of our patients, the American people, by providing our partners with safe, reliable, sustainable blood products and services. I'm going to talk to just a brief moment about why blood is needed. So every 2 seconds, someone in the U.S. needs blood. It is that's quite astonishing that if we wait 2 seconds, someone is in the need for a blood transfusion. Every day, there's about 36,000 units of red blood cells that are needed. You cannot manufacture blood. You have to get it from another living human being. And there are about 1.7 million people that are diagnosed with cancer every year. And many of those folks need blood during their chemotherapy treatment. I'm going to talk a little bit about sickle cell anemia. But every year there's about 1,000 people or babies that are born with sickle cell anemia each year, which those folks require frequent blood transfusion throughout their entire life. And a single car accident victim can require as many as 100 pints of blood. That is a substantial number. An average adult would have about 10 pints of blood. So to think that someone needs 100 pints of blood after a car accident, and if you think about it, 100 pints is 100 donations from 100 different volunteer donors. And every year, there's about 16 million blood components that are transfused in the US every year. So some pretty stark statistics there. Within your blood, so blood is defined as a special fluid that delivers nutrients and oxygen to the cells in your body and transports waste products away from your cells. When you think about the blood coming out of your body, that's your whole blood that contains red cells, white blood cells, platelets, and it's all suspended in plasma. But to break that component down, red blood cells, they carry oxygen from the lungs to the body's tissues and then take the carbon dioxide back to the lungs to be exhaled. 60% of all blood transfusions come from red blood cells from those particular components. Platelets are small cells within the blood that promote clotting and stop bleeding. And plasma is the liquid portion of the blood that's composed of water, proteins, antibodies, clotting factors, and other things. And there is something called the cryoprecipitated portion, which is a plasma-rich section that has that's rich in proteins, such as clotting factors, which I'll talk about how that's helpful in a moment. So as I mentioned, every 2 seconds, a unit of blood is transfused. I love this chart because it really helps understand what each blood product is used for. So as I mentioned before, about 60% of our blood transfusions in the US are red blood cells. They last about 42 days. And the uses are for trauma. Surgery such as a knee replacement or hip replacement, heart. There is basically in emergency uses, that's when we use the red blood cells, or that hospitals and doctors would use the red blood cells. And there's also blood disorders. Sickle cell disease is one area that would receive a red blood cell. Platelets have a much shorter shelf life. So one of those units that's donated only lasts for 5 days. Most of these, as you can see here in this chart, says half of all the platelets are used for folks that have leukemia and other cancers. Really, really important component of that blood for those patients. Plasma is the most it's used for is for burn victims. And then cryo is that is really focused, as I mentioned before, it's that it's for those that have coagulation disorders such as hemophilia. So it's those factors that help to clot for folks. So when we talk about blood typing, everybody has a blood type. And it is can be a little complicated. So in general terms, there are 4 types of blood that a patient can be for red blood cells. You are either a positive or negative within this blood type. And so it's either A, B, AB, or O. And it's then add the positive or negative, just depends on you. And so, for example, I am B positive, and I'll use that for some of my examples here in a little bit. Those that are positive Rh type can accept blood, have a blood transfused from a negative blood type. So, for example, I'm B positive, so I can also receive a B negative blood type. O negative is the universal red blood cell donor. It is if there is an emergency and the hospital or doctor is not able to run the test to determine what your blood type is, and you are in need of blood at that moment, then you can get O negative. And I'll tell you why that you cannot in a second round if there was something that happened in a little bit. Okay, so I love this chart because it really helps break down why donor diversity is essential to ensure that there's blood available for everyone. And this particular chart talks about the blood typing and what the prevalence is in the US population. You can see that there, let's say, for example, O positive, which is the most common blood type. 53% of the Hispanic community is O positive, while only 37% of the Caucasian community is O positive. So you can see that there is a there's a direct tie there to the communities of the diverse communities, and blood is needing, and I'm going to talk about matching here in a minute. It's really important for you to be able to find blood within those communities because you're more likely to match those from the same race or ethnicity as yourself. So this is very, very important for us to be able to get in front of all communities to talk about why blood donation is important for all of our communities, because at some point, a patient from our communities of race or ethnicity backgrounds are going to need that blood. I talked about typing, so we talked about the B and B positive, and on top of that, there is the phenotype, which talks about what types of antigens that are tied to you as an individual. And there are over 650 known variations of the unique antigen types. So this becomes important if you are having to have multiple blood transfusions, because if you are let's say I have an antigen type variation that is positive, and then another person that is negative for that antigen. If you were to receive a blood unit from me, your body would be okay for that one time, but it would develop an antibody. And then the next time you were to receive that blood donation, your body would reject that unit of blood, and it could lead to death. So it's very, very important for typing to be done if you've ever had a blood transfusion, and it's really it's life or death at that point. Like I mentioned, this is an example chart of a particular family of an antigen, and there are 3 different antigens here, part of the Duffy, that is that folks can be positive for. And so if you look at the first line, it talks about that 66% of Caucasian people have this particular antigen positive in their blood, while only 10% of the Black community have that antigen as positive. And like I said before, we need to match the blood, and largely matches come from donors of the same ethnic or genetic background. And so it is really important to match those positive antigens to from the donor to the recipient of that blood unit because of rejection. This is an example of a sickle cell disease, and sickle cell disease is a genetic disease that makes the blood cells sickle. So it's in the shape of a sickle, and they became hard and sticky instead of soft and round. The blood that are red blood cells that are sickle have difficulty to carry oxygen, and at that point, and they're sticky. They start to stick together, and they start to clot, and then it causes huge amounts of pain. It can cause stroke, and most people who have sickle cell disease have an early end of life, usually around in the mid-40s. And so it's a horrific disease that is not curable, but we can treat it. About 100,000 people in the US have it. 1 in 12 African Americans have sickle cell disease. And a single patient with sickle cell disease can receive up to 100 pints of blood each year. It's not just a one and done like a trauma. It is ongoing for their entire lifetime. And so when you're talking about 100 pints of blood, 1 pint of blood comes from one individual donor. So we would need 100 donations throughout that year for that one person. These are some just stories of those that have had blood transfused. Gavin on the left had a tumor on his spine when he was an infant, and through 2 years of treatment and multiple blood transfusions, making him stronger to be able to fight, he is now a thriving 8-year-old today. So that's just, it's amazing to be a part of just this life-giving mission that we have at the Red Cross. Marquita is a college student in Washington, D.C. She was diagnosed with sickle cell disease at birth, and she relies on blood transfusions every 6 weeks to keep her healthy and pain-free. And Cody was in a horrific car accident. He was given a 3% chance of survival, and he received 187 pints of blood, platelets, and plasma. Again, that is just unbelievable. The average person has about 10 pints of blood in them. And so to know that he had received 187 pints of blood after the crash is substantial. And I again just point to the fact that it took 187 people for him to survive that crash. The American Red Cross is the largest single blood supplier in the United States. We have about 40% of the blood market. As you can see, we distribute and collect blood in 49 states. You can see in Texas down there, we are what we call the Texas Triangle, is where we do most of the blood collecting. And then we're able to distribute to, it says 49 states here. Anytime that there is an emergency need where someone needs to have blood. Let's go. The FDA does blood banking is regulated by the FDA. All blood donor centers, it doesn't matter if it's the American Red Cross or a different blood organization. We have to follow the same donor eligibility criteria, such as travel, tattoos, lifestyle questions. The screening, yeah, I already said that. So the FDA does guide the blood donor incentives allowable to give to donors to ensure that donations remain a volunteer. So we, in short, don't pay people. It has to be a volunteer donation. It is a very safe process. We use sterile needles, and of course we discard them once we have done the phlebotomy on the donor. A blood donation process is very, very simple. You register, you go through a health history and a mini physical exam, and then you do the donation. And then afterwards you have cookies and juice usually. And so it's pretty quick, and it takes about an hour. The actual blood donation takes about 10 to 12 minutes. And like I said before, an average adult has about 10 pints of blood. Roughly 1 pint is given during the donation. You can only donate red blood cells every 56 days. We have other procedures that allow us to take 2 red blood cell donations at one time. And we really like this process because donors typically only come once, maybe twice per year, and red blood cells are the most needed blood that is transfused. It's the most transfused blood product, and so we want to make sure that we get as much red blood cells on the shelf to be available for the patients. And so if you do a double red and get 2 red blood cells, it's like I said, the procedure actually does the spinning down the components right there, and it will put the platelets and plasma back into you along with some sterile saline. And so you're able to do 2 donations at one time, but you can only donate once every 112 days. And then platelets, we do have that procedure at our fixed sites where we have the machines that are there, and you can do that every 7 days. So you can actually donate platelets way more often. Donors must be 17 years old. It is 16 in some states with parental permission that meet the height and weight requirements. So what I like to call the arm-to-arm process. I've talked about the donation part of it. Then it goes to our what we call our manufacturing lab. Again, you cannot manufacture blood; it has to come from another human being. That donated blood is spun down in our centrifuges to separate the different components: red cells, platelets, plasma. And then from there, we go into testing, and we do a bunch of tests. It says here a dozen tests, and we test for things like HIV, hepatitis B, C, syphilis and other infectious diseases. If it is positive, we do discard the unit, that donated unit, and then we share that with the donor. And of course, all tests are confidential. After that, we set it into storage. And again, all blood has a shelf life. So red cells can be in refrigerators for 21 to 42 days, but platelets is at room temperature for 5 days. They don't, and then they are no good. At that point, we have to get rid of them. So we are very, very careful with the donation product, because we don't want to waste a single unit of somebody who has donated. And of course, we have other products that are frozen for up to a year that I've talked about. And then once it is in storage, it's ready and available for our hospitals, and we distribute to our hospitals when they need it, which is daily, hourly. We're open 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. For those in Texas, remember the big ice storm, which everything shut down for about a week, where power was lost almost to the entire state. And our team here in Texas was still delivering blood product to the hospitals for those patients that needed it, even though that roads were impassable, and we still found a way. So just incredible work that our volunteers and teams do every day of the week. 84% of all of the blood is collected that the Red Cross collects at mobile drives. So we do this with churches, schools, very important. Schools are very, very important, especially during the summer when schools are out. For high school students such as yourself to stand up and say, hey, I'd love to have a blood drive, and really get the word out, because a lot of people go out on vacation, as you can imagine, or are not in school. And so blood donations go down, but the need is still there. Patients are still needing to have blood transfused. So we really find it difficult to get blood and keep blood on the shelf during that time period. Also during the holidays in December and January also are a big struggle for us. A successful blood drive really surprises a lot of people. It takes at least 12 weeks of planning, and it's in order for us to be able to make sure that we have all of our resources available. In particular, our staff and our equipment is available, because we have to make sure that blood is on the shelf. We're planning those drives with other organizations prior to the to the day of, and so it does take quite a bit of planning, but that's okay. Our team is ready to go, and to have that conversation. We have managers that that guide each and every one of these organizations, schools, offices to host that blood drive, and they're with them through the entire process to host a blood drive. Just a couple other facts. 2.5 million donors every year give. That's just a lot of people. And when you kind of think about how many times I think I said the number was 16 million people needed blood every year. At the Red Cross, 2.5 million of our donors are doing that. So it's important to give, and like I said, give often. Average number of times people donate is 1.65 times per year, and they're allowed to donate 6 to 7 times a year, given just depends on how the calendar lands. So it is really important for blood donors to give. And what's interesting, only about 65% of people are able to give blood because of whatever, maybe there's a medical issue or what have you, but only about 2% of the entire US population donate blood. It is really, really important for everyone to understand the need is large, and if people don't give blood, then that blood transfusion is not available for that patient, and one day that patient could even be you. The number one reason people say why they give blood is because they want to help others. You know, it's just it's the human nature for us to help. And the most common reasons people don't give blood is because they never thought about it. They don't like needles. And the big one is no one has ever asked me. But after the donation process, 94% of our donors say they intend to donate again within the next 6 months. I've got attached here some information for you if Zoe and team want to share that with you. And this is just some information about how to host a blood drive, a corporation or a faith-based community. About 300 people is really needed to host a blood drive, because if 10% donate, 30 units are collected. And that's 30 units is 30 lives, at least 30 lives, more if the blood component is utilized in more than one, you know, with more than one patient. Okay, so with that, I just want to say thank you for having me again. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them now or at the end. Zoe, back, or Katie, back to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Moeschler, for sharing. Our last speaker for this event is Mr. Chris Chesley. Mr. Chesley taught American Red Cross and American Heart programs his entire 15-year career in the Navy. He worked as an EMT and in management for several years before returning to teaching Red Cross Health Service programs full-time in 2017. He is an instructor for wilderness and remote first aid, CPR AED for professional rescuers, and emergency medical responder, with many certifications including instructor training for first aid, CPR AED, basic life support, first aid for severe trauma, and babysitting training. If you have any questions during this presentation, feel free to enter them in the chat.
Hi, everybody. Zoe, thank you for having me down. It's a pleasure to work with you guys. I appreciate the opportunity. A little bit, as I was told, I've worked as a combat medic. I've worked as an EMT. I'm a dad with 6 kids. I've performed CPR on one of my children, choking on a few of my children. 4 of my 6 were terrorists growing up, and that's where I learned a lot of my basic medical skills early on. So I have a lot of hands-on experience, and that's what I bring to you guys. Going back to some of the things that Dr. Rossano brought up, 350,000 cardiac arrests every year outside of the hospital environment. 70% of those, a little over 70% of those happen in the home. And statistics show that less than 40% of those people were helped at home by family members because they were not trained or didn't know what to do. They just waited for the hospital or for the ambulance to get there. And again, what Dr. Rossano brought up about medical care, the first 10 minutes is critical. The sooner we can get and recognize the need for somebody that has life-threatening bleeding, the sooner we can recognize the need for somebody that's having a cardiac arrest or having a stroke, the care that we can give them, getting professional response on the way to help us. That first 10 minutes, what we can do with stopping or slowing down life-threatening bleeding, starting CPR, getting CPR started within those first 10 minutes can make a huge difference in the survival rate. As an EMT, during my time frame, if somebody called and nobody helped, it was the average response time we were experiencing was at between 8 and 10 minutes arrival time, and that's under ideal conditions inside of city limits. Some of the places I teach, they have to wait sometimes 30 to 40 minutes for an ambulance to get to them. So the care that is given within the first 10 minutes is critical. Every minute that somebody waits that's in cardiac arrest for care, their chance of survival decreases by 10%. So by the time I get there, 8 or 10 minutes in an ideal situation, the survival rate nationally was less than 1% for cardiac arrest victims. But those people that had people that started CPR, gave good quality CPR, had been trained and knew what to do, the survival rate could go as high as around 35%. And if you think about it, if that's your loved one, would you want somebody to help and start before EMTs got there and give them a 35% chance of survival? Or would you rather wait till the EMTs got there? The survival rate less than 1%. This is the value of the training that Red Cross offers that we have for you guys. Understanding the need for an emergency, understanding the signs and symptoms. These are all things we train on. We have several programs available. First aid CPR AED is one of the most primary ones we teach. For those of you looking at possibly going into medical careers, we have basic life support training. For those of you going into different professional careers, we have certified training for professionals. We have for high school students, most of you I'm told are in high school. We have a program designed for high school students called FAST, which is first aid for severe trauma, dealing with heavy blood loss. We also talk about active shooter situations. This is something that we provide for high school students at a no cost scenario if it's set up in advance. It's geared where students do a little bit of training online, and then we come in about a 45-minute, which is usually during a class period. We can cover severe bleeding and how to treat it, how to recognize, how to deal with it. We talk a little bit about active shooter situations. We cover a lot of things. We get a lot of hands-on practice with equipment that we bring with us. It is a great way to get introduced to that. Like Dr. Rossano had mentioned earlier, thanks for stealing all my good thunder there, Doc. Just kidding. But we have a program called Hands Only CPR, which we can come in and teach in about a 45-minute class period. Okay, so there's a lot of things that we can do for you that you guys can organize through your high schools, through high school students. I'm just excited that you all are set up for this or interested in this. Those of you that are volunteering for the Red Cross, you guys have access as volunteers to free training through your Red Cross chapters. I teach all over the state of Texas. I would also venture and train in Louisiana, Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. If you guys need training and you have trouble getting it set up, reach out to me. Hopefully you can reach out through Zoe, or we can figure out a way that you guys can reach out where I can help you guys set this up through your chapters. Again, I teach all over the state. So I take my kayak and my camping gear with me, so I have a good time going with all that. But going back to statistics, a lot of people die from people not being trained. It is averaged that less than 2.8% of the nation's population is trained in CPR, and less than that is still current. So there's a great need for training. There's a great avenue for you guys to be able to become instructors, to learn yourself, share with your families, your friends, and get them information on how to get trained. Another number that surprised me looking up through this, 5,300 people died of choking last year in the United States. Okay, how many people could have been saved if somebody would have had a Red Cross class and how to deal with choking and knowing how to represent and to take advantage of their training and help save a life? Having done this, there's no greater feeling than giving back by saving somebody's life. Okay. I have taught many classes where I've had people that have come in that have had lost a family member, and had took them a while to get over the emotional trauma, but they were worried about losing another family member. One gentleman in particular, we were talking about choking in one of the classes I was teaching, and he started crying, left my class. We took a break. I went out and talked to him. A year and 3 months before that, he had lost one of his sons at the dinner table. He started choking. He didn't know what to do. His first reaction was grab him by his feet and shake him upside down. He knew that was wrong, but he didn't know what to do. By the time the ambulance got there was nothing they could do. His son passed away. He had 2 other boys sitting there and his wife watching this, and none of them had had any formal training. And it took him a while to get that training to come so that it didn't happen again. Traumatic stories. We have a lot of programs available for people. It's just getting the word out, reaching out to them, and getting them set up with classes, and getting them trained. You guys are the ground stage of the next generation of getting the word out to people, doing what you can to help provide an avenue to get this message out. You guys are ambassadors of the greatest nature. We teach to save lives. There's a lot of competition out in the world nowadays for this, especially since COVID. One of the big things that's come out is online only training, which is adequate. Unfortunately, if you've ever done anything yourselves, if you've ever worked on a project, you've gone on TikTok and learned how to do something, or you've YouTube something, how well did that go the first time you had to fix something or repair something? Or did you have to kind of redo it, kind of refix it, look at your YouTube or TikTok training, because you didn't have that hands-on training that could have given you a little bit more experience, that when a situation arose, you would be much more suited and much more versed in how to handle the emergency or how to handle repair. This is one of the advantages that we offer with our training programs, with the hands-on that we provide for our students. This is why Anytime I can get people to take hands-on classes where they can actually touch mannequins and actually get a chance to practice is so critical to them giving good quality compressions and good quality CPR when they do this in a lifetime fashion. So this is where I'm just enthralled working with you guys. I've seen too many people, and it's like one of the videos where, or one of the stills of one of the other instructors showed, or Dr. Rossano showed, people just stand around looking. They didn't know what to do. That's one of the hardest things in today's society. We talk with our thumbs. We chat, we talk, we text, we don't interact. So finding out how to say, hey, my name is Chris. I know CPR and first aid. It looks like you're having trouble breathing. Can I help you? And getting students to practice that in the classroom so that they know that when there's a person having trouble, instead of seeing this guy in HEB that's holding his chest and having trouble breathing, saying, ooh, I need to go down another aisle, because I don't want this, I don't know if this guy choking and coughing on me, or going up and saying, hey, my name's Chris. I know CPR and first aid. It looks like you're having trouble breathing. Can I help you? And you may very possibly save this man's life, like one of my students did down in Rio Grande Valley last year. This scenario happened where a person in HEB grabbed his chest, bumped into the shelves, knocked over some canned goods. He came up and said, hey, my name is, I'll say Chris, so not to use his name, but he said he jumped in, and just by having trained that in class, it came out as a reaction. He involved, and the guy collapsed. They ended up doing CPR on him with another person that was in the store. The manager brought the AED, but had never had any training on it. And fortunately, the two people that joined him helping out had AED training, and they shocked twice before the EMTs got there and had this guy breathing and alive by the time the EMTs got there. It was an amazing recovery. So these are the values that we have the potential of saving people from choking, saving children, saving adults, saving elderly. It's just an amazing program that we have to offer. I can't stress it enough. Biggest things that people don't realize is if you've ever seen a car on the side of the road, what would you have done if somebody had been slumped over the wheel? Or would you be able to stop and help if there was an accident and somebody was severely bleeding on the side of the road? Would you have the right equipment in your car? Would you know how to use the equipment? And again, these are all the things that we teach in class. So it's a lot of things that we bring to you. Think about this from family, friends. If you've ever been around somebody that's choked or somebody that's had an accident and you weren't sure what to do, how was that feeling? How would that feeling have been if you'd had a catastrophic outcome? How would you feel if you had the training where you could have saved a life just by having that training and actually having the actual practical experience of having done it? This is what we look for. This is what we want to provide for all of our students. These are the kind of people we're looking for to be our instructors that are willing to train like you guys are. We have a great program. One of the things I love about the Red Cross compared to some other facilities is once you become an instructor or once you become certified, you have access to a lot of training material that you wouldn't normally have access to, because we want our instructors to learn as much as they can. We want them to have more access to more. Every program we teach, once you become an instructor, you have access to so that you can further your training and education. Red Cross now has a certified nursing assistant training program in place. We just have we have life-saving programs, health services programs. We just have a lot of things that we provide for you guys. It's just, again, I can't stress, you guys are volunteers. A lot of you are. Please take advantage of the free training you can get through the Red Cross. Okay, I can't stress that enough. If you have problems with that, reach out to me and I will get you set up, and I will travel wherever you need training. If we get a few people out there, I'll get out there and train y'all. Okay, if we can't get you local trainers. I can't stress how important it is to get you guys going and have a lot of fun with this. But more importantly, have the confidence you need if you need to. And it'll also drive you in further things in your career path if you're going in the medical field. We have a lot of things we offer for that too. So that's pretty much where I've gone with what I've got to bring with you guys. A lot of what I had planned to cover was already covered. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm glad to hear them. Zoe, I know it's a little shorter than what I planned on, but if there's anything else I can cover, if you guys have any questions, please reach out.
Thank you, Mr. Chesley. Sorry, go ahead, Katie.
Okay, I was just gonna say thank you so much, Mr. Chesley, for sharing. And thank you to all three of the speakers for sharing today. We really enjoyed your presentations. And I hope everyone attending this event learned a lot and hopefully gained some new insights on the Red Cross and kind of the medical aspect of it. But now we'll start our interactive Q&A. So if you have any questions, just please enter them in the chat. I think there was already one question for Dr. Rossano. Someone said, would you mind just going over how you got into your line of work in heart medicine?
Yeah, thanks. I became interested in cardiac disease as a medical student, just became really interested in, how the heart worked and the circulation and taking care of children with heart problems. And then I did after medical school, a residency in general pediatrics. And then I did a fellowship in pediatric cardiology, and then some additional training in cardiac intensive care. So yeah, it's kind of a long pathway there, but it's been great, and it's a great field, very rewarding.
Thank you for sharing. Looks like there's another question on the chat. Was there like a particular instance with a patient that that kind of encouraged you to continue your education?
I'll jump in on that one. Oh, sorry, go ahead, sir.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, for me, and I treat young, children and young people, and so, there's been several instances where, my patients have had a cardiac arrest, or like the patient I talked about didn't know she had a problem and had a cardiac arrest, and those are just when we have a successful outcome, when there's good CPR and gives the patient the best chance, or just incredibly rewarding, because these are young people. They have a whole lifetime hopefully ahead of them where they can just go on and do wonderful things. And so it's we want to save all lives, and I just happen to take care of children and not older people, but it's just incredibly rewarding when we have these good outcomes.
First time I did CPR, it was about 3 months after the first training I'd ever received. I was in the Navy, and there was an accident outside the gate, outside the base. And when I got there, I started doing CPR, what I've been trained, but there's a lot of little nuances that I wasn't aware of, that I hadn't been trained. But the training I did receive helped me save a life. It was a fellow sailor. He had a family, a wife and family. I had a chance to meet them. And it inspired me to realize that just by coincidence, just by having to go out on an errand for my wife at the last minute that I wasn't planning on going out of the house, I ended up doing CPR and saving a person's life. It was incredible. Just the skill and knowing what to do, seeing people that didn't know what to do. And this was a long time ago, back in early 80s. And police officers didn't know what to do. The training wasn't diverse back then. And the fact that I could get down and help and save a life was incredible. So that's probably the one that lasted most with me, is being able to do CPR, learning some things that I hadn't been taught how to share with. And it's pretty cool.
I saw this question in the chat and I want to respond, but Chris, that's really motivating. That's incredible to hear. I've heard many instances of volunteers being trained and having a similar kind of response. And it's just, it's scary, but the training does work. So for me, I had a patient pre-COVID that needed, I got a call from my lab, and the lab said, hey, look, we have this patient that there's no blood available in the entire United States for this one patient. And she said, we have one donor that matches our blood donor profile that has donated before with the American Red Cross, and they live in Texas. Can you call them? And I said, oh yeah, absolutely. We're calling them, recruiting them, getting them in today. As long as they're willing and able, we'll get them in. So, we got that person in to give that blood donation that very day. So it was that was really incredible for me. I went back to the labs to understand why there was only one person in the entire United States database that could donate for this one individual, and come to find out this person, this patient, had sickle cell disease. And pre-COVID, there wasn't enough blood for these patients because the diversity of our blood supply. One of the charts that I didn't talk about, most of our donors are Caucasian, and the likelihood of us to be able to find a match for that particular blood, or for that donor recipient, it'd be like finding a needle in a haystack. It's like 1 in 250 out of 1 out of every 250 Caucasian blood units we look through would be a match. It would be more like 1 in 20 of a match in the Black community. So I knew at that very moment we needed to make sure that we were advocating to all races and ethnicities why it was important to give blood. I think that was just a monumental shift in just getting people to come in and donate and host blood drives, and change that kind of language to more of an education to all our communities why it's important to give blood. So for me, that was the most moving patient I've ever one of the first ones I'd ever experienced. I see a question in the chat. Zoe, Katie, did you want me to go? Okay. Or Ashi. Okay, that I think I got a nod. Yep. All right. So let's hear. You spoke about donor credentials and you mentioned various things that blood drives check for. I was wondering why tattoos might prevent people from donating blood. Is this something to do with the ink? It's just a safety precaution. There's a lot of FDA regulations, and the FDA has said that I think there's if I remember correctly, because there's a lot of reasons why somebody gets what we call deferred. I believe that there is a time deferral from when you have given blood, and that's just to make sure that a person doesn't develop symptoms. And I cannot remember the date or how long that time deferral is. It's not long, but after someone gets tattoos. But people with tattoos are absolutely able to donate blood. So there is a list of those deferrals on our website. If you go to redcrossblood.org, you can click on there and it will share why somebody would be donated for what the common deferrals are. And then there's also a phone number you can call if you have a specific question. We have a call center that is trained to be able to answer the questions of what the regulations are of what would defer someone from donating blood. The FDA rules change all the time. And thus we aren't, it's this group who manages that deferral list and can give you really the explanations behind all of those. I hope that answers your question.
Ashi, would you like me to answer the other 3-part question?
Right, I was about to get to you.
Those. Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. 3-part question I saw in there. What do you think the most important training for students is to receive? I think the most important training for anybody to receive is your basic layperson's first aid, CPR, and AED training. It deals with how to deal with choking victims. The first aid training talks about how to deal with stroke victims, for all different types of first aid scenarios, life-threatening bleeding, how to use an AED. These are situations that may arise without a moment, with just out of the blue. And knowing how to do those basic things, that first 10 minutes is critical. The difference of you having that training can save a life between somebody living and dying or potentially suffering brain damage or other further injuries that you can potentially prevent is amazing. And just having that skill. The second part of that question is, how do you deal with loss in emergency situations? I've had successes and I've had things that weren't successful. The non-successful ones, the best way I've dealt with that, the best way I feel is, if I hadn't tried, if I hadn't had the training and hadn't given the effort, they wouldn't have had a chance. So at least I gave them an opportunity, a chance for survival. I've had some that I have had respond and then have died from later on from further injuries. It's the same thing, as at least you give them a fighting chance by having the training and the skills, and giving them that opportunity. What are some ways students can get involved with healthcare and with the Red Cross, jobs, volunteering, training? Get with your Red Cross chapter, volunteer, sign up on check out the Red Cross website, sign up for volunteering. It's a great way to give back. We have all kinds of different programs. We have Ring the Bell, which is where we go twice a year and put out smoke detectors and CO2 detectors in people's homes for free. Spread the word, have them sign up with the Red Cross. We come out and put them in. You can train to become a responder for fire emergencies, things like that, where we help people that have been burned out of their houses, provide money and funds for them so that they can get an apartment, they can get some clothes. If they lose their prescriptions, we help them get them prescriptions. There's just so many different diversified ways that we can get people. We can provide disaster training, where you can go to actual disaster locations and provide training. It's just, there's so many diversified things that you can get into with Red Cross. It's amazing. And like I said, there's no better feeling than giving back. And it all starts with just calling your local chapter and asking them what you can do to help. It's that easy.
I would also add in the Biomed team, Chris is dead on. Go to the website. Go get with your local chapter. That is absolutely it. But since I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and put a plug in for my my team. We always need volunteers, right? So we have our blood donor ambassadors. Most of these are actually by high school and college students. They come in and they sit at our blood drives and they help us manage the donor flow. As people come in, they check them in, they register them, they talk to them about their next blood appointment. And so that's a really, really important role because it just makes sure that the operation runs smoothly. And then another opportunity for us is we have something called a volunteer medical screener. I talked about that mini health history where they do, check blood pressure, temperature, they check hemoglobin. That is actually a volunteer position. And so we can train you to do that. And the requirement is that you would just have to sign up for so many shifts per month, but it's only a couple. So it's, something that you can engage in, today. And then, of course, we have other things that are available as transportation. We hold blood drives throughout Texas every day. And so that all that blood has to be collected and then just taken and supply chained to our manufacturing site. So that blood is constantly moving on the roads in Texas, and it's being done by volunteers. They will drive because all the blood that gets collected in Texas pulls up to Dallas every day. And then we supply chain all the blood up to our manufacturing site, which happens to be in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So that is done every day. So that's a volunteer role as well.
One other thing is every Red Cross class that people take, they get continuing education units for. So that's a benefit in their college training. And Brian, I didn't mean to slight your blood donation team. Sorry about that.
No, you're totally fine.
But yeah, you get continuing education units, and it varies with how long the classes are, but it's another benefit that the Red Cross has established. It's awesome.
Okay, I think we got all the questions answered, I'm pretty sure. So thank you everyone for coming. And if everyone could just turn their cameras on really quick, we would love to get like a photo of this event. Okay. 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay. I think it took the photo. Let me just double check. Okay, yeah, we got the photo. So again, thank you everybody for coming to this event. We really hope you enjoyed it and learned something from it. And yeah, if you need volunteer hours signed, I think just email Medical Marvels if you guys want to put your email in the chat. That would be helpful for other people, probably.
Medical Marvels, if there's anything I can do for you guys, please feel free to reach out. Can they get my information from you, Zoe?
Yes, I'll forward your email to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sid, did you want to close off the event or?
Yes, of course. So if anyone wants volunteer hours for today's event, just make sure to shoot an email to the email that was just posted in the chat. And I would just like to say thank you everybody for joining today. To our wonderful guest speakers, we really appreciate your time and insight. And to our audience, we're glad you guys came today. And I really hope that you guys learned something from this event because I definitely did. If anyone has any questions or comments or is interested in future events or opportunities with the CSTR Red Cross and Medical Marvels, please don't hesitate to reach out to us on our social media. And once more, thank you to everyone who can make it, and we wish you the best of luck on your future endeavors. If you guys, kind of a shameless plug, want to follow us on our Instagram, I will put that in the chat. But yeah, that's it for me. Thank you everyone for coming. And yeah, thank you to our guest speakers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.